Lessons from Bastiat.
A small French boy throws a rock through a shop window. The glass shatters. The shopkeeper is furious, and a crowd gathers. And in that crowd, they start murmuring something strange. One says to the other, "Hey, look on the bright side. Now the shopkeeper is going to have to buy a new glass window. He'll pay the glazier 6 francs at least for that window. And you know that glazier, I'm sure he'll spend that maybe at the baker. And the baker, well, he may buy something from the tailor." And around it goes. You know, breaking that window, that put money into the economy. Maybe, just maybe, the boy did the town a favor. In case you haven't realized it, every person in that crowd was wrong. And they were wrong in exactly the same way the most bad economic arguments you will hear, even current day, are wrong. The man who explained why, he died in 1850 at the age of 49, and he may be the single most useful thinker that you have never read. Welcome back to the countdown. The man's name that we're talking about is Frédéric Bastiat, a French economist, and if you have followed this channel at any length, you've been hearing his ideas the whole time without even knowing they were his. Because here's the thing I want to say right at the top. The question we ask at the end of every episode, whether it's the Self-Evident series or Empire of Liberty, we ask, did this leave Americans more free or more governed? That question is Bastiat's. The whole way of looking at government that runs through this channel traces back to one man. Today is the day we introduce you to some of his ideas directly. So this list is a little different. We're not ranking presidents. We are not starting a fight today. We are handing you 5 tools, 5 ways of seeing in an order that builds. We start with the most famous, and we work our way up to the one that changes everything. By the end, you will not be able to unsee them. That's the fun of Bastiat. Once you learn what to look for, you see it everywhere. So here we go. Let us count them down. Number 5, the nature of government itself. Bastiat gave us the sharpest one-sentence description of the state ever written. He said, "The state is the great fiction through which everyone endeavors to live at the expense of everyone else." Think about that statement, because the statement is doing quite a bit of work there. The government, Bastiat is saying, produces nothing on its own. Consider, what does the state produce? Software? No. Cars? No. Airplanes? No. Widgets of any sort? No. The government sells nothing. Every single thing it hands to one person that it pulls from its coffers in order to give them, it must first take from another in order to fill those coffers. When a politician promises you something for free money, free programs, free benefits, Bastiat has already taught you the first question to ask. Free from whom? Taken from whom? Because somewhere, someone is paying for it, even if you cannot see that someone. That is the beginning of Bastiat. The state is not some magic source of wealth. It is a middleman, moving money from one pocket to another and taking a commission along the way. And once you see the government only redistributes, well, the next natural question is, how does it hide what it's doing? Which brings us to a joke that Bastiat told in 1845, one so sharp it still gets taught in economics classes today. Number 4. The funniest thing an economist ever wrote, and one of the most devastating. In 1845, Bastiat wrote a fake petition. He pretended to be the Candlemakers of France, writing to Parliament to complain about an unfair competitor. a rival, they said, who floods the market with light at a price so low we cannot possibly compete. A foreign competitor working under conditions so superior that our whole industry is being ruined. Who is this ruinous competitor? Well, if you haven't figured it out, we see him every day. The sun. The Candlemakers, Bastiat's Candlemakers, humbly petitioned the government to require the shutting of all windows, curtains, shutters, and blinds during the daylight hours. Block out the sun. Force the nation to burn candles at noon. Think of the jobs, they say. More candle makers, more tallow, so more cattle and more sheep. More whale oil, so more ships and more sailors. A whole economy booming, all because we made everyone poorer by blocking out the free light. It is a joke, but Bastiat's point is deadly serious. Every argument the candlemakers make for blocking the sun is the exact same argument made for every tariff and every trade protection ever passed. If it sounds absurd to protect candlemakers from the sun, then it is just as absurd to protect any industry from a competitor who simply offers a better deal. Bastiat did not argue against protectionism. He made it laugh at itself. Number 4 showed us how plunder hides behind a joke. Number 3 asked a darker question. What happens when plunder stops hiding and becomes the whole system? Number 3. And here the list turns from clever to serious. Bastiat believed there were only 2 ways for a human being to acquire the things needed to live. You can produce them, work, trade, create, earn, or you can take them from someone who produced them. Production or plunder. That is the whole choice. And most human history, he observed, is the story of plunder. The strong taking from the weak by force. What civilization is supposed to do is make production easier and plunder harder, until honest work becomes the only sensible way to live. But then Bastiat wrote the sentence that should stop you cold. He said, when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. Hear that again. When taking from others becomes profitable enough, people do not stop. They do something far more dangerous. They make it legal. And then they make it sound noble. They write the plunder into the law. And then they teach their children that the plunder is generosity, is justice, is compassion. The theft does not disappear. It puts on a suit and calls itself policy. That is the bridge to Bastiat's greatest idea. But before we get there, we need number 2. The broken window from the top of the show and the single most useful habit of mind Bastiat ever taught. Remember the crowd? They were murmuring with each other that the broken window was good for the economy. Here's how Bastiat answered them. Yes, he said. You can see the glazier earn his 6 francs. That part is real. That is what is seen. But what you do not see is what the shopkeeper would have done with the 6 francs if the window had never been broken. Maybe he would have bought new shoes, maybe a book. Maybe he would have saved it. That purchase, the shoes, the book, the savings, never happens now because the money went to replacing a window he already had. The town is not richer by a window's worth of work. It is poorer by exactly 1 window. The glazier's gain is real, but it is the shopkeeper's silent, invisible loss. And Bastiat drew from this the line that F.A. Hayek called the work of genius. He said, there's only one difference between a bad economist and a good one. A bad economist confines himself to the visible effect. The good economist takes into account both the effect that can be seen and the effects that must be foreseen. That is the whole game. The seen and the unseen. The jobs a government program creates, seen on camera at a ribbon cutting ceremony. The the jobs that never existed because the money was taxed away to pay for it. Unseen, scattered, silent, but every bit as real. The bad economist and the bad politician points only at what is seen. Bastiat taught us to always ask the harder question. What is unseen? Who paid? Who paid so that this could be shown to you? 4 lessons. The state is fiction. Protectionism is a joke that is not funny. Plunder writes itself into law, and every policy has an unseen cost. Now hold all those 4 together because they were only ever building to one place. The idea Bastiat spent his dying year writing down. Number 1. Bastiat's masterpiece. An essay he simply called The Law. He wrote it in 1850, the year he died. It is the foundation this entire channel is built upon. Start where Bastiat starts, because it is the whole argument. He wrote, "Life, liberty, and property do not exist because men have made laws. On the contrary, it was the fact that life, liberty, and property existed beforehand that caused men to make the laws in the first place." Hear that slowly. Your rights do not come from government. They come first. You had them before any law was written, simply because you are a human being. Government did not give you your life, your freedom, or the fruits of your labor. And so government has no rightful power to take them. The only power and the only proper job of the law, Bastiat said, is to protect the rights you already had. Nothing more. And from that single foundation, Bastiat built the idea that gives this list its name. If the law exists to protect your life, liberty, and property, then the law is being perverted the moment it does the opposite. The moment it takes from one person to give to another. He called it legal plunder. And he gave us a test to spot it so simple a child could use it. He said, "See if the law takes from some person what belongs to them and gives it to other persons to whom it does not belong. See if the law benefits one citizen at the expense of another by doing what the citizen himself cannot do without committing a crime." This is the whole test. If you cannot walk into your neighbor's house and take his property by force without it being called theft, then you cannot hire the government to do it for you and call it something noble. The fancy hat does not change the act. A larger mob does not change the act. Taking is taking, whether one man does it or 10,000 do it through their representatives. Now, there is an objection, and the honest objection, and Bastiat knew it was coming. Someone will say, but surely some of this is legitimate. Surely we agree to be taxed for the roads, the courts, the common defense. And that is a real and serious conversation where the line sits between the law of protecting rights and the law of violating them is exactly the debate worth having. And we have it on this channel all the time. Bastiat's gift was not to end that debate. It was to give us the tool to have it honestly, to make us name what is really happening when the law takes from one to give to another, instead of hiding it behind pretty words, behind fancy hats. Because once you have Bastiat's test, you cannot unhave it. You will hear a politician promise a free benefit, and you will hear the unseen cost underneath it. You will watch a subsidy pass, and you will see the candlemakers petitioning against the sun. You will feel the fancy hat and the larger mob for what they are. And you will find yourself asking one question about every law, every program, every promise. The question Bastiat handed us. The question this entire channel runs on. Did this leave people more free or more governed? That is Bastiat. That is where the liberty test comes from. And now you know the man. A few more for the ones who want to go a little bit deeper. The negative railroad. Bastiat's proof that if stopping a train to help one town is good, then a railroad made of nothing but stops would be best of all. Protectionism, reduced to rubble by its own logic. Henry Hazlitt, the American who took Bastiat's Seen and Unseen and built an entire book on it, Economics in One Lesson. If today lands for you, that book is your next step, and it is on a future list of ours. And one last line for this channel especially. Bastiat wrote, "The worst thing that can happen to a good cause is not to be skillfully attacked, but to be ineptly defended." A warning worth remembering by anyone who loves liberty and argues for it poorly. So here's what Bastiat leaves us with. Not a political party, not a slogan, a pair of glasses. One lens is economic. Always look for the unseen. What is the cost you are not being shown? And the second lens is moral. Always look for the plunder. Is this law protecting what people have earned or taking it from one to hand to another? Put those two lenses together and you have the question we ask here about everything. It was Bastiat's question first, and now it is yours. Did this leave Americans more free or more governed? That is the list. If Bastiat is new to you, do yourself a favor this week. The law, it's short. Pick it up. It's also free online, and it will change how you read the news. Then come back and tell me in the comments which lesson hit the hardest. I have a guess about which one, but I want to hear yours. And if you're new here, this is exactly the kind of thinking that runs through everything we do, including the full series on where American liberty came from and where it went. Self-evident, the road to 1776. Subscribe, and I'll see you over there. Until next time, have a great day.